Mr. Wagner? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Carl Wagner, and I'm representing this proposed change to the bylaws.
Yes, sir.
If you'd like me to speak about them.
What do you propose?
I just think it's interesting to note as we look at regulating things like not selling water bottles and stuff like that, you take a favorable look at the fact that I'm trying to get rid of something that I think is unnecessary rules and legislation. I grew up in this town. I've lived here a long time. I found out last year when I was having a car repaired, and a rather tricky repair, and came back and the car wasn't quite done, and the guy was running around being the mechanic and also selling gas to people, that he said, your town requires me to pump gas for folks. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. Never really thought about it. A lot of people have never really thought about it. There's a thing called the Arlington email list. Some of you have read, I'm sure. I don't usually read it because there's so much of it. And I was surprised to see that self-serve gas has been popular in the last couple of days as a discussion topic. So people do think about it and do care about it a lot. But I am simply asking that the town do what most other towns in Massachusetts do, and most other states, except for 2 in the United States do, which is not keep an old rule that probably is based on old technology and the lack of people to be able to safely pump gas. I'm asking for that rule to be removed.
I should be the last one, and I keep speaking first. Excuse me. Who would like to speak on this? Mr. Kiro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Wagner, for bringing this forward. I enthusiastically support this for precisely the reason that Mr. Wagner recommended. We do seem to be in a position, in a cycle here, where we're constantly being asked to ban and restrict activities. I do feel that this is outdated. I actually grew up in one of the other towns in the Commonwealth, a few towns left, that has a ban on self-service gasoline, and I would go to surrounding towns and use the self-serve. I think it's noteworthy that a lot of the concern when the bans originally came in centered around public safety issues. We did put this out for comment from departments, and the chief and deputy chief replied back to us that they had no concerns, given that state codes do adequately cover this right now. A few folks that I've talked to, who their knee-jerk impulse has been to say, well, I don't like it because I want to be served at the pump. But I think it's important to recognize that what Mr. Wagner is bringing forth is not something saying that we ban full-service gasoline. We're just opening up an option. Some people like to be able to go in, get out, pump it, and go on their way, and not wait for the attendant to attend to the other 2 or 3 cars at the island. And I think there's a lot to be said for providing that choice to folks. I think it makes us competitive vis-a-vis our surrounding communities as well. I think it's also important, and I know you've done more research than I have, to note that even if there is a service station which is providing self-serve only, somebody who is disabled and requires assistance, I believe the Americans with Disabilities Act requires that the station assist them if they call for assistance. And we've all seen the stickers on the pumps. So for myself, I'm actually very supportive of this, and I would support a motion for favorable action. I'd like to hear from the rest of the colleagues.
I'm just going by town meeting member hat right now. I've heard from numerous neighbors and 2 businesses, gasoline businesses in my precinct, that they don't want to, they fear that this will, I know you're saying it will give the option, but I've even heard from the business owners, but I didn't ask permission to quote them, that I'm going to be forced, because everybody's going to do it, offer it a little bit cheaper because you can, because there's less people being employed. And I've heard from so many people, the list seems to be running, I can't really tell the way it's running, because it started getting into a semantic and kind of having fun with it, but I haven't heard from one person in my precinct, business owner or resident, who's in favor of this, and I've been amazed by how many people have contacted me, including just walking down the street and doing some other neighbor thing. So I respect that you want to move favorable action. I just want to explain why I'll be voting no.
Sure.
Could I add a few comments to help people who are watching on TV and perhaps your opinions of what's gone before on this? This was brought up, I think, in the 70s as a ban, and then in the 80s, people who are still in town were names that I saw on the record and discussing a possible repeal of the ban in the 80s. Everyone I contacted who was attached to that in the 80s now unenthusiastically said they would not be against keeping the ban, would not be for keeping the ban. So I thought that was interesting. I also contacted most of the gas stations. There may be a couple I couldn't get, but I did make 3 attempts to contact most of the owners of the gas stations. Curiously, the gas station where my car was not quite ready and where the guy was telling me it was a pain to have to fill the gas, the other owner of that station told me they do not support it. So that was a little weird because the one I talked to clearly did. So the gas station owners, in fact, one of them told me that he did not think there'd even be much of an employment impact at all. One owner told me just today, he said, my guys were being insulted and harassed by customers who were insisting on pumping their own gas, or that didn't want to touch the hands of the employees, or that were basically being bad customers. So several people I talked to, and I have no connection, monetary or otherwise, to these gas stations except the place I took my car the one time. But these guys were telling me that they thought it would be a good thing, and then so the people I talked to, Charlie Lyons, Stephen Gilligan, some other people, Howard Winkler, they basically said they're not against it anymore, and the gas stations that I talked to mostly were not against it, and I think it would be a change for Arlingtonians, but I mean even looking across the state, Arlingtonians who travel across the state, they can pump their own gas. I would support that the zoning laws that govern gasoline stations should probably be looked at, because there's lots of new changes in gasoline stations anyway, including full-serve stations. I would say in the next review, they could change the actual gas station zoning bylaws so that any look and feel or the way that Arlington works is preserved in that way, but that it doesn't belong in the general bylaws of Arlington to do something that really nobody else is prohibiting anymore.
Thank you. I was just explaining why I won't be supporting it. You know what, ultimately town meeting will decide, so I'm not.
No, I agree with Mr. Chiara, and I do support this, as long as we can stay on top of those ADA requirements, because you do run into some gas stations where, someone is not really easily accessible to, help out. And so if there is, and I think that, our business owners will do a good job of keeping up with that. So I do support this, and I think, it's keeping up with the times to a certain extent. You see it happening everywhere else, and I think it's about time to make that jump. So, thank you.
I'm going to support the motion that Mr. Chiara is about to make.
I move favorable action on the,
He had already, but
Oh, did you actually?
well, I didn't actually place the motion, so I move favorable action.
you're saying I'm wrong?
What's that?
You're saying I'm wrong, that you didn't?
No, I'm not.
I actually was also here with Mr. Lyons, Mr. Gilligan, and others. There were two differences between two things. One was it must have been '89, because that's the first year I was on the board, although I was a town meeting member before that, but it was allowing for self-serve, but they also must keep a full-serve island. So this is what, if I'm understanding you, this would allow a completely self-serve gas station. Am I correct, Mr. Wagner?
My intent is to remove the prohibition. However, the town of Mendon, it seems to me to be a good example of what we might want to follow. Mendon, this last year, June, I think, removed their prohibition that was in their general bylaws, and they asked their zoning bylaws team with the planning department, et cetera, to come up with logical zoning bylaws that covered things such as they mandated full-serve gas, they mandated a maximum size, and I was talking with someone today who told me that there's all sorts of TVs and stereo systems coming into full-serve and self-serve gas stations. I would think we would want to probably prohibit those too in our gas zoning bylaws.
So, actually, so you're saying we could still do both?
I would think that, I would hope that my action does not make any negative change in the feel of how the gas stations fit into the community, and I would think that the zoning bylaws should do that work instead of the general bylaws.
Because I'm with you, I favor it 100%. My mother, who's 92, not driving anymore, but in her 80s, she used to yell at my brothers and myself that we weren't pumping our own gas, and she did, she had to teach me. But I absolutely favor self-serve. I mean, I was in the line yesterday at a convenience store, and a younger person in front of me bought a pack of gum and used the debit card. And it's like, why wouldn't you just take out $1? But that's just so, so it's time, and I agree with you 100%. The other issue, though, that came up, and I remember clearly, Mr. Selectmen came up in front of town meeting and he said he sent his students to Cambridge, to Belmont, to other places, and in all cases, the self-serve gas was more expensive than the Arlington no self-serve gas, which stunned me, because you would think if it's full-serve, obviously that would have an extra expense to it, but the self-serve doesn't. But anyhow, I support you 100%, and thanks for bringing it forward. So, on the, it's a hearing, so anybody else? All right, on the motion by Mr. Radosha. He had been silent far too long, let's face it, so. Robert.
Bob Radosha, Precinct 11. Basically, I'm okay with this, but the thing is, I've been pumping gas for 53 years, or longer, whatever it is, and more. Yeah, anyhow.
So you don't shop in Arlington, Mr.
Well, no, the point I want to make is really, it's kind of silly, but I still think I like to do it in Arlington because somebody's being paid to pump the gas. It's a job, okay? That's the part, and I make an effort to do it whenever I can. Now, if I'm going to go buy all self-service, I'll go to Woburn where I can buy it for a nickel less. So that's my take on it. And the other thing is, you could turn it off so I can say something, but my wife has no idea where the gas tank is. And she wouldn't know the first thing about doing it, so I worry about how that's going to work out.
Radosha, please call the Selectmen.
So,
Immediately.
that's simply my take on it, but like I don't have a problem pumping it. I think it's great, but on the other hand, I hate to see somebody lose a job because of it. Okay, thanks.
And I think a station would be wise to do both, but we'll see the way the bylaws come out. But the first thing we would have to do is remove this, so they're allowed, period, right?
Okay.
So who seconded? Sorry.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying
Town
aye.
council is-
Whoa, yes.
Not going to stop you, just point of clarification when I go to rate the board's vote. I think what's been proposed under this article is the just straight repeal of the existing prohibition. And I can write it that way, but a couple board members have mentioned, wanting to keep full serve. If we don't write it into the proposed vote, it's going to be gone. I mean, Mr. Wagner makes the point about zoning bylaw changes. Those could happen, but they wouldn't happen until next year at the soonest. I did actually, upon reviewing his materials that he submitted, I did check the Mendon zoning bylaws, and there's actually not, there are certainly restrictions on size and things like that, but there's actually not a restriction requiring the retention of full-serve gas stations. And if a zoning bylaw were changed next year, it wouldn't necessarily apply retroactively. Although Mendon does do its gas station permitting the same way that we do, which is by special permit through our redevelopment board. So my question is, do you want me, in writing this proposed vote, to, rather than a straight repeal, amend it to repeal the prohibition, but also require that a full-serve option be retained? I'm not sure of the board's position on that.
My intention with my motion, Mr. Chair, was just strictly to do the repeal, and my reasoning for that is that I don't feel comfortable putting that additional restriction on, because we do have stations of different sizes, and some of them are only one island stations, but that was my intention. I don't know about the rest of the board.
Well, so if I'm following what you just said, Juliana,
I know it's hard.
so we just repeal it. Let me just pretend for a minute. We only repeal it.
Right.
And we wait till next year to do any zoning bylaw changes. But what you're saying is if a station has gone completely self-serve before then, they cannot then be mandated to have to put in a full-service island as well.
Correct.
Or a full-service side to one island.
Correct.
I'm still no, but,
Yeah, well, you've been no all
Is
along,
that-
right? So,
yeah.
right?
no, I saw faces, that's all.
Does the board have any thoughts on this? I mean, I really would, I want to be sure we can maintain full service, right? We're not This doesn't eliminate full service, but we're also not mandating they have to do full service. Is that what you're telling me?
Mr. Curo's proposed vote would not mandate that.
Correct.
I'm still supporting his motion.
Again, you're going against me.
I don't know, you haven't said anything yet.
And you too, you're going against me. Okay, well. You know, the first rule you learn here is you count to 3. All those in favor of the motion by Mr. Curo, so that's all we're doing, if I'm correct, is repealing that self-service now allowed.
Correct.
Okay? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed.
Nay.
Okay, so
I have